Hello, everyone. Um, Hi, Lucas. My name is Odessa, and I'm going to be talking about my past 3-month experience daily driving Void Linux. So a bit about who I am. My name is Odessa, use she, her. A second year CSEC student, bit of an OSINT fan. Enjoy going to raves and music that's a bit too loud. Right now, I run both Linux and Windows. Windows on a very large PC. I keep well away from everyone else. Have way too many friends in tech crew. Know too much about tech crew for that. I make music and I do digital design in my spare time. I'm on the ISTS 2025 Linux Black team. Also participated ISTS 2024. Ask me about that later. Hi, Zach. I'm the treasurer for the RIT EDM Club and the Rubber Documenter this year. So getting into it. This presentation is going to be covering my experience with Void Linux and Void Linux in general. This is not, this presentation shouldn't be a reason you decide to switch to Void Linux. This is just my experience. It does not reflect probably the experience you will have playing with operating systems. But to quote Scals, Void is so goated. I wish he was here. So getting started, what is Void Linux? Just to list some of the stuff they have on their official website. It's a standalone project. It's a rolling release, but stable, allegedly. Instead of using systemd like a lot of Linux operating systems, it uses runit, which a lot of differences. I'll go into that later. Has its own package manager, written from the ground up in C. Very community focused. This really just means that there's not a lot of official documentation. You have to look around for it. But most importantly, it's not Arch, which matters. So going a bit deeper, like Nix, Debian, Arch, this is its own standalone project, meaning it leads to a lot of weird stuff that can happen, unlike in other distros. Because it's so small, a lot of times certain packages won't work out of the box, or you have to build them yourself or end up Dockerizing them. And volunteer-based, so all the code, the entire code base, all the packages are maintained and developed by the community itself. Again, leads to ups and downs. Everything's open source, so yeah, all the ups and downsides of open source that come with that. Bad documentation, it works on my computer, etc. But for developing new packages and for developing for Void, there's a decent amount of documentation and a well-made process, mostly because it's just pushing to the Git repo. So pretty stable to do that. But it does run into some issues with certain Electron apps like Discord or Chrome, where it isn't too friendly all the time, in my experience. Going back to this whole idea of runit versus systemd, how services are run and taken care of. Runit, unlike systemd, everything is its own bash script. What that really means is you can just go in and directly edit how the service runs or what part of the service. Like if something's not working, you just go in and tweak it. They're kept there. So you install the service, and then you create a symlink to the var service directory, and they just run on startup from there. That's basically how they work on startup. One of my screenshots up there is my var service directory with all my current services running. Yeah, overall, it's a very lightweight way to run things. It gets rid of a whole lot of bloat that comes with systemd that I wasn't a fan of personally. And while there is definitely a learning curve to how does runit work, how do these bash scripts work, it's not that hard to get the hang of. The XBPS package manager stands for X binary package system. This doesn't have to do with the desktop environment. I don't know why it has like X there. There are a bunch of different XPPS commands that come pre-installed. XPPS create, which is it's what helps you actually package the binaries for Void so you can upload them. dgraph I've never used, so I can't talk too much about it, but it's used to generate dot graphs. XPPS install is your main installing command. It's basically apt install and apt update and apt get upgrade for the apt enjoyers here. It's all those in one. The syntax is similar to Arch in terms of tac syu for the update. XPPS package DB, it's what you use normally when you find an issue with a certain pre-made package. You can go in through the system to help report it. If it gets fixed, though, that's another thing. XPPS query, it's similar to dpackage tac-l, where you can just list all of your installed packages. It's not any deeper than that. It's literally just list all of your installed packages, which for some people, like, really important, so you can like remove any unwanted packages. For me, I have a lot of bloat on my system right now. XPPS reconfigure, just going in if like some package is messed up beyond belief. Allegedly, you can go in and run reconfigure, and it'll go back to the state at which it should be. There's still some issues with that as well in terms of cached information. XPPS remove, just remove a package, not that deep. And RIndex, I've never touched it as well, but handling local packages, so it's involved in the package publishing process. My only real issue with XPPS is that's annoying as hell to type. Because on the QWERTY keyboard, it's not that good to type. I don't like it. I would have set up an alias, but I got used to it. It's community focused, so there isn't a lot of regular docs for it. The docs on the website are mostly for the install process, but the subreddit, surprisingly, is useful. There's a lot of information on there, a lot of people posting not the problem you have, but problems they have had that you will be able to learn from. For some of my problems, it took a fair few, just like reading a lot of stuff to figure out why the hell it wasn't working. But the subreddit was definitely a big help for that. Void, they recommend you use the official IRC channel. Personally, I have never gotten anything good out of that channel in my life. It's either not active or no one wants to hear your problem, which is pretty much IRC right now in general. So, yes, Stefan? Yes, XPPS handles every part of the upgrade. Oh, that's the question. Devin asked if XPPS handles kernel upgrades and system upgrades. Yeah, and it does. It handles the entire upgrade system. And that's mostly because XPPS was written specifically for Void. So they were written together so they work well because like they're one and the same, essentially. Thank you. And I mean, the real good docs are always the Arch docs because for every package, it's made for Arch. Wow, like you can't just copy and paste things. Arch forums and the Arch wiki is just really useful all around for random package issues because everyone on Arch has the most random issues and you're bound to have some crossover with them. But yeah, it's not Arch. That's very important for some of us. So I did actually miss one of these points. Rolling release, but stable, they allege. No, it is not stable. You run an update, restart. Oh, why am I on a TTY now? That's crazy. Anyways. Going on to my personal experience with Void. This is the part where things get fun. Why I personally run Void. So my operating system journey started in 2014 with my first computer, which was Ubuntu 14.04 loaded on an old MacBook Pro. weird start. I used Linux for 5 years until COVID hit when I switched to Windows because I wanted to play games online, and there was no good Steam like on Linux at that point. Ran solely Windows 10 all of COVID and most of high school. Until I got the laptop I'm using currently, I decided to throw the most modern version of Ubuntu on there, which at the time was 2204. Ubuntu, stable, works. I had a lot of experience with it. It was fun. Then I ended up bricking my Ubuntu box because I got silly for Cora 2 and decided to install some packages right after I had upgraded to 2404. And 2404 is a very hostile environment to be installing anything on, and messed up my system so bad. I decided, hey, if it's broken, I had heard about Void in high school, and then when I got here and talked about it, Scouse talked about it a bit with me, because he had experience running it. So like, sure, why not? Either I hate it and I switch back over winter break, it's only 3 weeks, or I get Stockholm Syndrome. It's been like 3 months since I decided that, so I think Stockholm Syndrome won. The pros of running Void. My battery life has increased drastically. I still technically have a Windows partition on there, and I still go back to it occasionally. My laptop is a ThinkBook T13, so like the worst version of a ThinkPad. Battery is bad. The battery's bad. But with all the optimizations, I can go most of the day without charging. It will die at the end of the day, but like Void runs so light the way I have it set up right now. It's, yeah, the battery life just makes it worth it for that. Another thing is through all my struggles with it, I've gotten to know my machine inside and out. I've had to poke around at most subdirectories, most root level directories at some point because I broke something accidentally or on purpose. So it's really helped my just being comfortable with my system and my knowledge of Linux in general. And it's really optimized for my workflow. This is only my school laptop, so since nothing runs on Void, it's really hard for me to get distracted because there's like no fun packages I can install to do anything aside from like Firefox. I'm not going to be playing web games in class. So I run River Window Manager, which is for all intensive purposes i3. Yeah, i3 or Sway. Those are the more common tiling window managers. But yeah, it just means that windows are a bit annoying sometimes to use. Firefox is basically half my operating system at this point because everything runs out of web now. So all of the things like my Proxmox server, I can just access it through Firefox. NeoVim, I'm using Brenner's config right now, or some version of it. He's probably updated it. And a Fish terminal. So it's very lightweight system right now, and it works for school. Yeah, that's really the main thing. It's like usable for school, usable every day. But audio drivers and like plugging in an external monitor, external display still work. It just takes a bunch of time to set up. So it's annoying, but like I can still use it for most things that anyone else can use the laptop for. And I get to virtualize all the services and stuff that I use that doesn't run natively. So there's a fair amount of Docker containers that I'll have to spin up for silly things. The cons, there are no packages. This gets annoying when you want to go build a fun project and nothing runs natively. And doing it in Docker would be annoying. And I don't have a VM image currently that I want to run, that I can run it on. This was annoying when I got to VRig, and I wanted to run the operating system, but it was like I could not run it. Also, nothing works out of the box half the time. Everything requires some level of configuration for it to work, at least in my experience. There's some things that just work cleanly, but even Firefox didn't work out of the box, which was so weird. I had to go in and manually edit some files just to get Firefox to work. everything runs out of the command line for me. That's more of a me issue because I'm running with River instead of like running in GNOME like a sane person would. But I feel like running in GNOME it's belittling the operating system if I do that. There's also, again, there's like no documentation for like my specific issues. So there's a lot of having to figure stuff out on my own. We'll see later in the presentation one of these issues, but like even reading through Reddit threads, asking the IRC chat, reading through Arch forum threads, there's just wasn't a lot that got me help. Also, I can't get VMs to work, but that's probably a skill issue more than anything. So now getting into what were the first 2.5 months of my time running Void. Basically, fighting with dbus. What is dbus? It's how you get the graphical user interface to show up. It's how you get out of a terminal. Yeah, so starting off, the setup. When I first switched over to Void, I made a bootable USB stick. Worked great. Plugged it in, got into it. You know, it just worked out of the box. Thought if I installed it, it would keep working. Turns out I chose the fun install, which is where it comes with nothing except like bare networking packages and some core utils. For 3 some days, I didn't have a GUI at all. If anyone was in the club room while I was doing that, you would have heard the beeping coming from my laptop every time I accidentally pressed the backspace in a TTY. Until Ash told me the specific kernel module I had to interact with to turn that off. Also coming from Ubuntu, Ubuntu is a very stable distro. Ubuntu, you don't really have to touch the command line. No help. It was very weird going from Ubuntu where things would work with apt and systemd right into Void. I had to relearn how services worked entirely. I had to relearn like how symlinks worked, how to keep track of them. But after about a week, I was able to get it to a state where I could use it every day for school. And then immediately things broke. In my process of installing things, I had a lot of redundant packages, a lot of things that I didn't need. I don't know entirely how, but dbus broke, meaning this is the main problem. When you turn on your computer, you just expect to be dumped to your login page. That wouldn't happen. I'd be dumped into a terminal where I'd have to log in, manually run dbus, and then I would log in to my window manager. Also, eLogInD would just be screaming constantly into the terminal as I was going through, waiting for things to happen. I think every second it would send 2 messages, so no editing files in the terminal, just like suffering. However, everything is a bash script. So like if the run script won't run on startup, as long as I can get into the machine, I can just manually run the service myself. And that ended up being pretty much the workflow for turning my laptop on. I'd turn it on, get dropped into terminal, log in as root, run dbus manually, then log into my user. It was a little annoying. A lot of people made fun of me for it, but it was stable for the most part. Next thing that happened, I was getting tired of having to do that. And I tried reinstalling dbus, didn't really work, had the same issue. So I was like, you know what if we ignore this issue entirely? Services run on startup when you put them, or when you symlink them to var services. So what if I just make a service to run dbus? I'm pretty sure I called it dbus driver or something. Something like, it didn't work though. Like, I set it up correctly. Service ran, dbus still didn't run. So it was, yeah, it just didn't work. Oh, I didn't, I should have images here. They aren't here, oh well. Next thing, I was told by a lot of people, oh, just throw the script into your rc.local. because the rc.local is the text file that runs on startup, so that should just work. This was actually a horrible idea. Never touch your rc.local ever. What ended up happening, I added the script to my rc.local, it would run, it would say dbus was running, and then I wouldn't get a GUI up. So a little confused what to do. I would like switch to another TTY. Oh, dbus is running. I can't start it. I can't get into my laptop. I have database in 30 minutes. What I ended up doing, because I carry around like I think 4 bootable disks at all times, they've come in useful, so I don't regret it. I think multiple people have used my Pop! OS disk before. I plugged in my Void disk and mounted my main file system to the USB's file system, went in, changed the rc.local to allow myself to write to it, removed it. I didn't know if it would work though, because I was doing this in database and I was sitting right in the front row. And I really don't want to be dropped back into a TTY and things just start beeping again. That's like, I don't want to have the interaction with the teacher. I don't want to like have that happen. But at the end of the class, I was just like, yeah, screw it. We're gonna get back in. And I was dropped right back into the original problem. So we had gone from like -2 back to -1, which is still better than being at -2, so we'll take it. Then everything broke. I decided, yeah, we're gonna uninstall and reinstall dbus the hard way. How? Remove the symlink, remove every directory that has dbus in it. Reinstall. You know, maybe some files persisting somewhere, some weird stuff. That did not work. Somehow I broke networking. I don't know how. I didn't touch any of the networking services, but networking broke. I ended up essentially having to rebuild all my networking from scratch. This was a couple weeks ago when this happened, actually. I had to what happened, since you can't log into edu room with just a password, ended up using my phone's hotspot, hard coding the credentials just to get back in to reinstall dbus, which then it reinstalled in the same fashion where it would just drop me into a shell. So we took a step back. Well, if things keep installing badly, why? Took a deeper look into XPPS install. Turns out, when I was doing the reinstall, I had noticed a little error that says something about core utils or some core package being corrupted. It's like, huh, that's weird. Well, if I just like reinstall everything like without the cache. And yeah, that just worked. So like I spent 2.5 months on a skill issue, but because of that, I learned a ton about how Linux works, how Void works. And honestly, I think I've gotten to the point where I've bricked my system so many times that I don't know what will make me switch to another distro. Do I have any regrets? Yes, actually. This took a lot of time and a lot of stressing, multiple days, like afternoons in the club room on the weekends where I would just be fighting with my laptop for like 4 or 5 hours trying to figure out what the hell was going on. I still haven't fixed my VMs not working. Void still has its own issues. However, my battery life has never been better. Should you switch to Void? Hell no. Switch to something stable. Unless you are really up for the challenge and don't care about spending a bunch of time finding all this shit out yourself the hard way. Yes, Stefan? What do I use for virtualization? Glad you asked. The only virtualization packages that are compatible with Void Linux are KVM and QEMU, which I can't get to work. Yeah, it's probably a skill issue. It might be a Void issue. Who knows? I have a Proxmox server, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms? Lucas? Why did I switch to Void in the first place? Went over this a bit earlier about going more into depth. I always thought it was cool. My friend had ran it in high school. I didn't know anyone who had run Void, and I didn't want to run Arch, and Ash was already running Nyx. So I was like, I've heard about this distro. I know 2 people who have ran it and say good things about it. I've like spun up a VM once or twice. Why not? And from then on, it was the battling Stockholm syndrome. Forrest? Did I have fun exploring my system, finding out how it was broken? Yes. I don't remember the exact types of fun. I think this would be like type 2 fun, where it's not fun in the moment, but looking back on it, it was a lot of fun.
This right here is why you should break your stuff. It's fun to learn things.
Type 2 fun is still, hell, type 3 fun is still fun. Any other questions? Devin? No, Docker just works out of the box. Because without Docker, everything would, it would be unusable. Without Docker working, no. Not a direct error message. It's just not connecting to my virtual machine manager. So, yeah. Not the way it is on my machine right now. If I want to spend another afternoon fixing Q and KVM instead of just relying on the Proxmox server, I'll take a look. I've heard, the question is, have you heard about DistroBox? I've heard the name. I've never looked into it.
DistroBox allows you to automatically spin up Docker containers that contain a full operating system in them, and then X works with it too. So if you run GUI apps instead of distro, it automatically forwards them forward.
I run Wayland, not X. I like Wayland. River runs on Wayland. No other questions? Yes, Devin? Say again? Full disk encryption. Does it work out of the box? I do not want to encrypt my disk. If I had encrypted my disk, I would still be stuck behind the, oh, I tossed something in my rc.local and now I can't get into my box. I am not encrypted. Listen, if any of you want to try and load some malware onto my machine, go ahead. You will not get any use out of it. I barely get any use out of it myself. Like, if you can find a better use for it than I do, congrats. I'm waiting for it to break so I can go buy a framework.